So you read that title and probably thought to yourself, WTF? And I say to that, awesome. I'm Cliff. This is Life with MS, and let's get into it. To be perfectly honest, the MS baby has been born, and it's been with me a long time. In human time, it probably should have moved out of the house by now and would come back every Christmas, but it's kind of a deadbeat and it's just hanging around needing constant attention every day, all day long. Thanks, MS baby. So what the heck am I talking about? Well, when I talk to people that have MS or other chronic illnesses like lupus or Crohn's disease, they often describe their MS as being like an additional child that they're raising. And I have to agree. I have a 7-year-old. He's fantastic. And I see a lot of parallels between raising a kid and dealing with MS, except MS doesn't have any of the fun parts of having a kid. As Gavin has aged, I really started to notice and focus on the fun parts of having a kid. I mean, he is so cool, but MS is not cool. But MS requires a lot of the same attention that raising a kid does. And with the reality is that, well, MS isn't ever going to grow up and move out. It never actually takes responsibility for itself, and it constantly gaslights me. So it's kind of stuck in being the 2 to 3-year-old-ish range as far as a human kid goes. So to celebrate the wonderfulness of MS, what I thought I would do is I would put together a top 5 list of things that make my MS like having another child. Let's get into that. Number 5, it wakes me at all hours of the night, and usually it's not the one that wet the bed, I am. Thanks, MS, you're awesome that way. Number 4, MS. All is too hot or too cold. Wherever I go, I have to take extra clothes or I have to take ice packs because MS is going to be miserable no matter what the conditions are, and it's going to complain and make my day miserable. So thanks for that one, MS. That's especially fun. Number 3, I wrote down here because it's good. If I plan a trip my MS doesn't want me to go on, I'm staying home because I know it will ruin the trip no matter how badly I try to enjoy it. I wrote that yesterday when I was in a massive flare, which is why I had to read it word for word because I don't remember what it said. I had a couple previous videos about learning not to push through it, but just kind of learning to accept what MS was going to do to me. This is kind of that thing. I have to accept the fact that MS is going to make the trip potentially miserable because it's decided it doesn't want to participate. Now, that's like having a toddler in many cases. If you've ever had a 2-year-old or even a nephew or a niece that's in that range, they can take a super fun trip and make it pretty miserable pretty fast. There's only 2 options. They are either going to add a lot to it and make it super fun, or they're going to subtract a lot from it and make it not super fun and in fact quite miserable. MS is on the subtraction side of that. It likes to think oh yeah, we're all going to have fun, and then you get to wherever you're going and it's no, we're not going to have fun. And when I say we, it means everybody, because it's going to make me miserable, and then I'm going to make everybody around us miserable because I'm going to be feeling like crap, and I can't hide that sometimes. Number 2, I need to be sensitive to MS's needs, but it doesn't really give 2 poops about mine. Yeah, does that sound yeah, that's like having kids. When they're in that early stage, you have to really kind of nurture them and the whole thing. They're not very developed yet, and they're kind of selfish, and that's how MS is. It's a very selfish disease. When it wants attention, and there is nothing I can do about it other than be oh, you're going to be okay, because I'm not at a point anymore where I can say, nah, you just have to suck it up and go with it, because ultimately it's going to make my day miserable if I try to do that. Number 1, I'm going to read again because my memory's weird today. I can't leave the house without asking MS first, and leaving it with a hot babysitter and pizza money just won't do. If I make my own plans and don't think about how MS is going to feel, it's going to let me know, and it's going to be a very miserable time. Now, this kind of ties back to basically this whole video in general. It's kind of incorporated in the other 4 reasons why MS is like a child. And if MS doesn't want to participate in the activity, it's going to make things living HE double hockey sticks. That's for those of you that have KIDS roaming around, and, I try to censor it a little bit. So there you have it, my top 5 reasons that MS is kind of like having another child. It's just kind of difficult, except unlike a child, There are no positive aspects of it. Like, kids grow up, they become wonderful people most of the time. They're just like super entertaining. I get so many laughs every day out of my kid. The things he says and the things he does is just like hilarious. And we have 2 dogs. You throw that all in there, and it is just a show. And I absolutely love it. MS is not the kind of thing where I'm like, oh, this is going to be entertaining someday. Now, there are some cool party tricks, like the time I couldn't feel my hands. And I cut my finger open peeling potatoes at a party, and it was bleeding excessively bad because I had had a couple of drinks, so the blood was pumping. And so I grabbed a lighter from the grill and I cauterized it right there because I couldn't really feel my hands, which is part of the reason I cut to begin with on accident. And my friend's fiance just about puked and passed out on the floor. Yeah, I didn't think that one through too well. Don't do that. But there are some cool party tricks that come with MS. They're just few and far between. They certainly aren't worth the amount of turmoil this disease puts us through. So I'm curious, how is your MS like a toddler? I want to know. Comment below. You guys are hilarious. I read some of the stuff and it's just so funny. And like I always say, I always learn something. And I think other people always learn something. And this video is not about me. It's just kind of touching off a topic for discussion in the comments below because I love to read what you guys say. So I'm Cliff. This is Life with MS. And I'm out.